When I started uni, I thought it would last forever, but 3 years later, it's done, and I am a graduate of a university here in the Netherlands, and I graduated when I was 30. Now I'm 31, have a bit of a later birthday, so it was in the year that I turned 31, but it doesn't matter. I graduated just like I wanted to, and I am so incredibly proud of myself. It was such an accomplishment, something that I have been working for the better part of a decade, because I wasn't able to go to university right after high school, like is quite common. And I just want to congratulate myself and everybody else who finishes university after the normal time frame. It is such an amazing achievement, something to be proud of for the rest of your life. And to do it a decade older than most people, whether even if you do it 2 decades later, it is so amazing to overcome an obstacle like that, because it really can be quite mentally challenging, because you are in a completely different life phase than the people you are interacting with every single day or doing group projects with, and it's just not easy. There is no guidebook, there are no special resources for older students. You're already expected to have a lot of things figured out by that point. It's mostly focusing for people who are incoming and for the first time. And to have completed this in the 3 years that it takes to do a bachelor's here in Europe, I'm so proud of myself. And even if it took 4 or 5 years, it doesn't matter. Still finish, and I'm so proud of myself. So with that out of the way, I just want to talk a little bit about what life has been like here in the Netherlands, in Europe, because I also did an Erasmus in Austria. And let's do that. Let's talk about that. So the first thing is that over the past 3 years of living in the Netherlands, I have become accustomed to the way that the Dutch do things. The school system is a lot different here than in Canada, where I am originally from. And first of all, it's just way cheaper to go to school here. I have a European passport, so I don't have to pay international fees like, full Canadians have to, like full just passport holders have to. So that's already maybe a bit of a different starting block than other people who might be thinking about going back to school, because finances are something so important after a certain point. Like when you're younger, it's easier to be a bit more risky with school debt and stuff, but by the time I was 28, it's you have to be really careful what you do with your money. That's the reality of it. So going to do school in Europe is way cheaper than in Canada if you are a citizen. It's about 2,200 euros a year, and I think it's about $7,000 a semester in Canada. I don't know, because it doesn't matter to me. I'm not going to school in Canada, but it's very, very expensive in Canada compared to Europe. And that is because the Dutch state actually subsidizes a large part of the tuition. So tuition for internationals here is about $10,000 to $12,000. And then the Dutch government pays a huge portion of that, so that Dutch students only have to pay about 2,200 euros. It's the same price for everyone. It's just that if you are a European citizen, it is subsidized. And that is one thing we are really missing in Canada, is subsidized education. Investing in the people that are going to be the future is something that we really should be doing more. But neoliberalism, am I right? So essentially, it's way cheaper here in Europe to be educated. Secondly, I did an Erasmus in Vienna, Austria, and I will say there's a huge difference between Vienna and the Netherlands, I guess, because I don't know what the rest of Austria is like. Despite being really beautiful, Vienna is actually a very cold city in my opinion, and perhaps that just corresponds with the time of the year that I was there, because I was there for the fall-winter semester, but the city was completely dead. I got used to the Netherlands, all times of the year. People are outside all the time. The way the cities are built is just everybody is outside all the time, commuting, out for a coffee. You can really people watch here. But in Vienna, oftentimes I would be walking in the street on a beautiful day where there's actually sun, and I would look around and I was the only person. It was just buildings and buildings, and it was just me. And then the only parts that were really busy were the tourist areas, and it was so hard to make connections and talk to people. It's actually impossible. Like I could not break into any kind of like niche or just pleasant group or even someone to grab a coffee with. And that was really shocking for me because no matter where I go, I always find something or someone to connect with. And in Vienna, it was just really dead. And, it really was a lonely 4 months. So yeah, I really wish I had picked somewhere warmer like Spain or Italy or just even any of the southern Mediterranean countries I would have much preferred because then at least I would have had better weather. So yeah, Vienna was kind of a miss in terms of how the living was, but the courses I took at the University of Business and Economy or Economics and Business VU were so amazing. The teachers were truly invested in what they were teaching, and it was social policy that I minored in for that semester. And I think I went away with a lot of interesting things that will, of course, work their ways into urban planning because social policy and urban planning go hand in hand. So essentially, yeah, big time difference between Netherlands and some of these other countries here in the EU. I don't think I will be going back to Vienna anytime soon. I'm very happy here in the Netherlands. It is just the most perfect place, actually, in my opinion. So, lastly, just talking about finding yourself, I guess, as an older student, I feel that going back to school at 28 and finishing at 31, it really just showed me how brave I am. And it does take a lot of courage to uproot your entire life. I don't want to underplay and underestimate how difficult it is to uproot yourself from another country. It's so crazy navigating a new place with a new tax system, a new housing market, a new job market, especially if you are not proficient in the language here. So of course my Dutch is not perfect. It's not great. It's a work in progress. But I really see a future here, and that's not what I had in mind when I moved here. Of course, I wanted an education. I thought I would go back to Canada and work in the urban planning sector. But just being here and seeing what's happening in Canada right now with the cost of living, with the political climate, I'm just much happier here. And I'm more invested in living in Europe than there. So I completely found a new path and a new place I want to call home, a new place I want to invest into. And this is something that changes you as a person, of course. So like acquiring a new language, understanding the way people socialize here, it is different than in Canada. But yeah, essentially in the long run, I'm just so much more happier here. And I think a lot of it has to do with the built environment. And that is what I studied. Of course, I studied urbanism. And I don't think enough could be said about how absolutely important the environment you live in is. Urban sprawl, I think, should be the biggest problem that people are trying to combat in terms of community building, climate change, aversion, and just preparing for a better future, a healthier, sustainable future. And it's like the Dutch have been living this way for the past 50 years. Since the 70s, they have been prioritizing, maximizing what little space they have. And perhaps that is why they are the way they are here in the Netherlands, because they have so little space to work with. And in other countries, people really just take advantage of all the space they have. And it's a shame because conservation efforts really should be greater. We don't need all this space. 18 million people can live in a tiny little corner of the world like this. And I don't understand why we need to be urban sprawling. In North America, especially the suburbs where I am from, is absolutely bleak, right? But then again, it's interesting to connect that back to my Erasmus experience in Vienna, because despite being in a big city, a capital city, I really had that suburban feeling in the city. So it is so fascinating how different places facilitate different feelings. And it's also up to the people who live there, just the different mentalities, a nation's mindset can also go a long way. So that's also something that I think is really, really interesting. And essentially, yeah, I finished my uni. Now I'm taking a year off, and then it's off to do my master's next year. And I'm really excited to do that. Yes, so anybody who is thinking about going back to school, do it. Do it if you're 30, do it if you're 40, if you're 50. There was a woman in her 40s in our program also, and there was nothing weird about that. She's a very like nice addition to our class. And of course, you know, you stand out. You don't always have something to relate to with people, but at the end of the day, you also are more aware of what you want to do in life. And that's what I took away from school. And that was the easiest thing for me. It took me 10 years to figure out what I wanted to do. And because of that, I was able to be really focused during my studies, and I knew what my end goal was. And there was no questioning. And, you know, that's something that I really am grateful for, because I spent the last decade of my life questioning, what am I going to do? What am I interested in? And I found it. And during the course of my studies, that wasn't an issue at all. So, yeah, it's hard being a student at an older age. You have to put a lot of things on hold. One of my classmates is also my age, but he had a daughter and a wife, and he had to be able to maintain school, family, and extracurriculars. But it's possible. You know, people can do it. People do it all the time. It's all about prioritizing, and it's going to be hard. You have to budget like crazy to be doing school at this age. Um, but it's worth it, because now I have a bachelor's in something I really, really care about, and I'm doing the next steps to become even more proficient in my field, because this is something that I think is very important for the future. And yeah, so that's basically my little update.